we've already dealt with our own budget hole in the budget debate we went through that ended, this past summer. And I have to say, the good news there is that we had bipartisan support. We had support from the governor himself on keeping our housing trust fund intact. At the state level, our housing trust fund is the way that we fund homeless programs as well as a variety of other kinds of housing assistance to low-income Ohioans. But the support was to not cut it. There's no increase there. There's nothing to try to alleviate some of the suffering that we're seeing and some of the increased demand that we're seeing. So as we move forward, we can call on our policymakers at the federal level to not follow this false notion that somehow we're going to work ourselves out of depression by slashing programs that help people in poverty. I don't see how that's going to work. It will just make matters worse. And at the state level, I know we're talking about revisiting the state budget sometime early next year. And I'd like to revisit what we're doing when it comes to some of our most vulnerable citizens, people that are experiencing homelessness. I'm not sure what could be done, but I think that there's another opportunity to look at how we're dealing with homelessness across the state. I'd like to turn it over to, I think Tina first, right? From Hopeful, who's going to talk about the work they're doing in Dayton and the photos that they're sharing. Thank you.
I'm Tina Patterson. I'm the Executive Director of Hopeful. I think I'm Hopeful a couple of times, but I think our old name. It is Hopeful, but our organization is called Hopeful, and that's a name change from what we used to be called, which is The Other Place. And a little bit about it. Hopeful is a social service organization who serves people along the continuum of homelessness in Dayton, Ohio. We've been around for about 26 years now, or actually 25 years, and started in the basement of a church as a drop-in shelter to provide services for people to get out of the weather, and really grew into a real comprehensive organization that serves people along that continuum. And we talk a little bit, and I certainly appreciate organizations like COHHIO that really present an opportunity to talk about the numbers, to talk about the big picture of homelessness, and always has our back in legislative matters. So I want to thank COHHIO for always doing that, and keeping everybody honest is a good way of saying that, right? But as a social service organization, we kind of have a couple of responsibilities. We have a responsibility always to support legislation and advocacy efforts to make sure that the rights of the homeless people are actually protected. We're in a country that doesn't have a right to housing, which is an interesting kind of concept, which we kind of debate that a lot. But as a greater responsibility, we have this responsibility to the clients we serve. And Hopeful provides services to about 6,500 people annually in all of those programs along the continuum. As Bill had mentioned, there was a prevention, the stimulus grant, which Hopeful was fortunate enough to be a part in Dayton, Ohio, and provide a lot of assistance to people who were literally at risk of becoming homeless, that we think might have, as Bill says, have kept kind of the gates at bay a little, and are fearful for what that actually means. But we also have case management services to people who are currently experiencing homelessness. And that means those people who are actually staying in emergency shelters or living on the streets, under bridges, or in abandoned houses. And our piece to that is really where some of our major advocacy, because we are so fortunate, and I say that, is fortunate to be able to see people who are currently experiencing what is very hard for many people to even grasp the concept. And a lot of people believe there's so many misconceptions about homelessness. People choose to be homeless. People don't want to work. People can't do certain things. Our job is to also be able to tell their story. So for those people that are currently experiencing homelessness, and on any given night, and I actually did a report and I was checking it before I got up here so I can give you the state of the moment in Dayton, Ohio. We had 257 men sleep in our Gateway shelter. We had 35 families with approximately 105 children. And we had 81 single women in our emergency shelter last night. That's actually probably a fairly good average of the year. We expect those numbers to rise with the winter months. And our job is to rapidly rehouse those folks and get them out of the situation of currently homeless. And then the other piece of what Homeful does is we are a service provider for people who have been homeless, and that's in permanent supportive housing programs. People who are previously homeless with a disability. There are lots of statistics that are proven facts that it's a cost-effective way to end homelessness is to provide services to people rapidly in their own homes so that they don't repeat the cycle of homelessness. So on top of that, and I've been doing this job for about 17 years now, I have had the great fortune of always being privy to the stories of homeless people. And while we certainly appreciate numbers, I quoted a lot of numbers, Bill quoted a lot of numbers, we don't ever want to forget the person. And that's really how we kicked off the concept of the promises of Homeful. And I can tell you, we debated a lot about whether to call it face, whether to call it the soul, whether to call whatever. And actually, I have two people who are, I like to say, kind of the brains behind it, Nick and Emily Stamus, who coordinated really everything about the art of this exhibit. It came actually out of, I was at the National Coalition to End Homelessness last summer, and there was a photo gallery in the hotel of portraits of homeless folks. And I think it was from Minneapolis, and I made some phone calls, found out what they had done, got on the website, and I thought, wow, that it was so powerful to me. Those images spoke to me, and I thought, you know, again, I have this responsibility of the folks that we serve right here in Ohio. And so we put together this amazing team, AGI Photos, said they agreed to do it. We actually spent a day in the shelter. We called all of our programs, said we'd like to see if people are up for taking their picture. And in exchange, we were going to give them the target picture of them back with photos and wallet sizes. Many times it was folks that had never had their picture taken, or it had been many, many years. So the day actually ensued. We had about 70 folks in all of our programs show up. We converted the shelter into a photo studio. We took over 700 photos that day. What really then kind of struck us to say it's more than just the pictures, because we thought, oh, we'll have the pictures, what do we do with it? Is all the events that happened that day. And it was about this family right here. I actually got to know her that day and knew that she was in our rapid rehousing project and heard the story. And many of the folks came to that day apologizing for what they were wearing, the fact that they were homeless. You know, can you take my picture? Can you give it back to me? Can I give this picture to someone? And as the pictures became to life to us, we saw that these actually was an opportunity. You could see promise. You could see the promise that they have for themselves and the promise that we have and the obligation that we have to be their voice. And so it evolved into the stories, the promise, their ideas. Some of the folks whose pictures have been taken that day, which are on, hopefully you guys will all go down in the map room and see it, have moved on, have actually become housed and are living independently. Some are still in the system. There's a man that strikes me, and he was one of my favorite photos. He's got paint on his pants. And he was working in a painting job that day and actually came in, because we offered tokens, I won't lie, as incentives, which is amazing. It didn't take much to get people to take photos. But he actually said, I need the tokens to get to my job. And he had paint on his pants, and he apologized, and we said, that's what we want to see. That's who you are. And I have a responsibility to now start to begin to change the perception of people and homelessness. Many people, and we start with this exhibit, and anytime we go and have an opportunity to do advocacy work with children in groups, we always ask them to tell me what you see when I say homeless. And it is never, never a 9-year-old child. It is never a family. It is always something very grim and dark. And for us, none of those photos represent, I don't know, hopelessness. It represents what we believe is really a promise that we have an obligation. We have an obligation to house people and to meet their needs. So that's why this campaign has become so important to us. We kicked it off at our gala, but what better way during National Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week, and what better place than right here for people all across the state of Ohio to recognize all the stuff that Bill said is truly, truly important, but we can ever lose sight of what this really is and what homelessness looks like. And it's not what you think it is. So I thank you for coming today. I hope that you actually are as touched and moved by the exhibit downstairs. It meant a lot to us. And every time I take it down and put it up, I'm still touched. It never ever turns back into just a photo. It is still that person. So I hope that you can see that. So thank you.